A simple woman was asked to solve a hard equation as a joke, but what happened next shocked everyone in that room. Sometimes brilliance hides behind the most humble facades, and Mary Thompson was about to prove that appearances can be deceiving in ways nobody expected. The morning sun cast long shadows across the cobblestone courtyard of Beacon Hill Preparatory Academy in Boston. Mary Thompson clutched her worn leather bag tighter as she approached the imposing brick building that had educated Boston's elite for over a century. Her simple beige cardigan and comfortable flat seemed out of place among the polished marble and gleaming brass fixtures. "You must be the substitute," said the receptionist, barely glancing up from her computer. Her tone carried that particular brand of New England politeness that managed to sound both courteous and dismissive at once. Mary nodded quietly. "Mary Thompson. I'm here to cover Mrs. Peterson's algebra classes." At 38, Mary had grown accustomed to being underestimated. Her soft-spoken demeanor and preference for thrift store cardigans made her nearly invisible in rooms full of accomplished professionals. She'd learned long ago that sometimes invisibility was a blessing. The hallways buzzed with privileged energy. Students moved with confidence that comes from knowing your tuition could fund a small country's education budget. Their conversations peppered with references to summer homes in the Hamptons and ski trips to Aspen. "Mrs. Thompson?" a stern voice called from behind. Mary turned to see Dr. Robert Thornton approaching, his expensive suit and perfectly styled hair announcing his authority before he even spoke. As the school's academic supervisor, he carried himself with the swagger of someone who'd never questioned his place in the world. "It's actually Miss Thompson," Mary corrected gently, extending her hand. Dr. Thornton's handshake was firm, calculated. "Right. Well, Miss Thompson, I hope you understand the caliber of education we provide here. Our students are destined for Ivy League schools. They're not accustomed to temporary arrangements." Mary felt the familiar sting of condescension but simply smiled. "I understand completely. I'll do my best to maintain their standards. See that you do." His eyes scanned her simple outfit with barely concealed disapproval. "We have a faculty meeting in 10 minutes. Conference room B. Try not to be late." As Dr. Thornton strode away, Mary took a deep breath. She'd been through this dance before. The subtle put-downs, the testing, the assumption that because she worked as a substitute teacher, she somehow lacked intelligence or ambition. What they didn't know was that Mary Thompson had once stood in lecture halls at MIT explaining quantum mechanics to graduate students who hung on her every word. But that was another life, another person. The woman walking into conference room B was just Mary, simple, quiet Mary, who kept her head down and her past buried deep. The conference room smelled of expensive coffee and leather-bound books. Several faculty members were already seated around the polished mahogany table, their conversations dying to whispers as Mary entered. She chose a seat near the back, opening her notebook. "Ladies and gentlemen, Doctor," Thornton announced as he entered, "let's begin." The faculty meeting droned on with typical administrative blather. Budget allocations, standardized test scores, college placement statistics, the usual measurements that reduced education to numbers on a spreadsheet. Mary listened politely, taking notes she'd probably never need. "Now," Dr. Thornton said, his voice taking on a theatrical tone, "let's discuss our mathematics curriculum. We pride ourselves on challenging our students with advanced concepts that prepare them for higher education's rigors." He walked to the blackboard, picking up chalk with the flourish of a conductor raising his baton. With deliberate strokes, he began writing a complex differential equation, each symbol carefully crafted to intimidate. "This," he announced, tapping the board, "is the kind of problem our seniors tackle in advanced calculus. Not everyone can handle mathematics at this level." Several faculty members nodded appreciatively, though Mary noticed more than a few confused expressions. Dr. Thornton's eyes swept the room before landing on Mary with predatory precision. "Miss Thompson," he said, his voice dripping with false curiosity, "since you'll be teaching our algebra students, perhaps you'd like to try your hand at this. Consider it a professional development exercise." The room fell silent. Mary felt every pair of eyes turned toward her, some filled with pity, others with curiosity about the spectacle about to unfold. This wasn't education. It was entertainment at her expense. "I'm just here to teach algebra," Mary said quietly, hoping to deflect. "Oh, come now," Dr. Thornton pressed, his smile sharp as a blade. "Surely someone who presumes to teach mathematics at Beacon Hill Prep should handle a little calculus. Unless, of course, you feel it's beyond your capabilities." The challenge hung in the air like smoke from a fired gun. Mary recognized this game. She'd seen it played before in academic circles where egos mattered more than education. The substitute teacher was being put in her place, reminded that she was temporary, disposable, less than. "Dr. Thornton," said Professor Williams from the English department, "perhaps that's not necessary." "Nonsense," Dr. Thornton waved dismissively. "We're all educators here. A little intellectual exercise never hurt anyone." Mary's hands trembled slightly as she closed her notebook. The irony wasn't lost on her. She'd spent years hiding from exactly this kind of attention. Yet here she was, thrust into the spotlight by someone who had no idea what he was unleashing. "It's really quite advanced," Dr. Thornton continued, his voice gaining confidence. "Partial differential equations, complex variables, multivariable calculus. Nothing to be ashamed of if you can't solve it." "I'll try," Mary interrupted softly. Dr. Thornton blinked, clearly not expecting acceptance. "Excellent. Please, come forward." Mary stood slowly, walking toward the blackboard. The chalk felt foreign in her fingers after so many years, yet familiar too, like greeting an old friend after a long separation. Behind her, someone coughed impatiently. Mary picked up the chalk and began to write. Her first stroke was tentative, but as the solution began to flow from her mind through her hand, her movements became more confident. Numbers and symbols cascaded across the blackboard in a symphony of mathematical logic that transformed the chaotic equation into something beautiful and comprehensible. The room grew progressively quieter. Dr. Thornton's smug expression began to falter as Mary worked through the first derivative with fluid precision. She moved across the board methodically, each step building upon the last with the grace of someone who understood not just the mechanics of mathematics, but its poetry. "Interesting approach," Professor Williams whispered, leaning forward in her chair. Mary's hand moved faster now, muscle memory kicking in as she navigated through partial fractions and integration by parts. The chalk clicked rhythmically against the blackboard, punctuating the silence like a metronome, keeping time to her thoughts. Behind her, she heard Dr. Thornton clear his throat. "Well, you're certainly enthusiastic about this." But Mary was lost in the problem now, transported back to a time when equations like this were her daily bread. She saw the solution path clearly, not just one approach, but 3 different methods that could lead to the same elegant conclusion. She chose the most efficient route, her chalk dancing across the board in sweeping arcs. "My goodness," breathed Professor Chen from the science department. "She's actually solving it." The comment hung in the air like a revelation. Other faculty members began to sit straighter, phones forgotten, attention fully captured by the unfolding demonstration. This wasn't supposed to happen. The substitute teacher wasn't supposed to know advanced calculus, let alone solve it with such apparent ease. Mary reached the critical point where most students would stumble. Without hesitation, she applied a substitution that simplified the expression beautifully, then followed it with an integration technique that even graduate students sometimes found challenging. Dr. Thornton moved closer to the board, his brow furrowed as he tried to follow her work. His confidence was evaporating like morning mist, replaced by something that looked suspiciously like concern. "Where did you learn to—" he began, but Mary was already approaching the final steps. With a flourish that would have made her former MIT colleagues proud, Mary completed the solution. She stepped back from the board, setting down the chalk with a soft click that sounded thunderous in the stunned silence. The equation was solved. Not just solved, it was solved elegantly, efficiently, and with a sophistication that revealed deep mathematical understanding. More than that, Mary had included alternative solution paths in the margins, demonstrating multiple approaches to the same problem. Professor Williams was the first to break the silence. That's absolutely brilliant." Dr. Thornton stared at the blackboard as if it contained ancient hieroglyphics. "I— how did you—" Mary turned to face the room, her heart pounding but her voice steady. "You were right about one thing, Dr. Thornton. Not everyone has the mathematical background required for problems like this, but some of us do. This is graduate-level work," Professor Williams said, amazement clear in her voice. "Where did you study?" Mary hesitated for a moment, then spoke the word that would change everything. MIT. MIT? Dr. Thornton's voice cracked on the acronym, as if the syllables were too weighty for his throat. Mary nodded, her hands clasped in front of her. "Massachusetts Institute of Technology. I was a professor there for 8 years. The faculty meeting had transformed into something else entirely. The neat rows of chairs suddenly felt like theater seating, with Mary as the unexpected star of a drama nobody had purchased tickets to see. Professor Williams leaned forward, her voice gentle but curious. "What did you teach?" "Advanced mathematics, quantum mechanics, theoretical physics." Each word felt like a confession, secrets she'd buried so deep she'd almost convinced herself they belonged to someone else. "I published papers on differential topology and worked on research grants worth millions." Dr. Thornton looked like a man who'd just discovered his house was built on quicksand. "But you're a substitute teacher." "Yes," Mary said simply. "I am." The silence stretched uncomfortably until Professor Chen asked the question everyone was thinking. What happened? How does someone go from MIT to substitute teaching? Mary's fingers unconsciously twisted the simple gold band on her right hand. Not a wedding ring, but something far more precious. Life happened. My husband David was diagnosed with early-onset dementia when he was 39. He was also a professor, philosophy at Harvard. The room held its collective breath as Mary continued, her voice steady despite the emotional weight. Caring for someone with dementia isn't like caring for someone with a broken leg. It's watching the person you love disappear piece by piece, day by day, while their body remains perfectly healthy. David needed full-time care and insurance. Well, insurance doesn't cover everything. Professor Williams's eyes glistened with understanding. "So you left MIT. I took a leave of absence at first, thinking I could manage both. But academic careers don't pause for personal crises. Research grants have deadlines. Students need consistent instruction. Conferences won't reschedule themselves around your family emergency." Mary's voice carried no bitterness, just quiet resignation. "I could be a wife or a professor, but not both." Dr. Thornton sat down heavily. "How long did you care for him?" 7 years. David passed away last spring." The words came out matter-of-factly, but Mary's pause spoke volumes about grief too fresh to fully process. "By then I'd been out of academia for so long that going back seemed impossible." "But substitute teaching?" Professor Chen asked gently. Mary smiled for the first time since beginning her story. I still love mathematics. I still love teaching. Substitute work lets me step into classrooms without the pressure of research or academic politics. I can just teach, help kids understand that equations are puzzles waiting to be solved. The transformation in the room was palpable. 20 minutes earlier, these people had seen her as temporary help. Now they were looking at her with something approaching awe, not just for her mathematical abilities, but for her sacrifice and resilience. I'm sorry, Doctor, Thornton said quietly, sounding genuinely human for the first time. The way I treated you, you treated me exactly like most people treat substitute teachers, Mary replied without malice. It's just how the world works. The faculty meeting officially ended 20 minutes later, but nobody seemed eager to leave. Instead, small groups formed around Mary, drawn by curiosity, admiration, and perhaps a touch of guilt for their earlier assumptions. Professor Williams was the first to approach directly. Mary, I teach advanced literature courses, and I've always struggled with the mathematical concepts in poetry, meter, rhythm, statistical analysis of text patterns. Could you help me understand them better? Before Mary could respond, Professor Chen chimed in. Our science students are failing calculus at alarming rates. They understand the concepts but can't handle the mathematical foundations. We could really use someone with your background. Dr. Thornton, who had been unusually quiet since Mary's revelation, finally spoke up. Ms. Thompson, I owe you an apology, not just for today, but for the attitude that made today possible. Mary studied his face, searching for sincerity. We all make assumptions, Doctor. Thornton, the question is what we do when we realize we were wrong. You're right. He ran a hand through his perfectly styled hair, messing it for the first time since Mary had met him. I've spent so much time focused on credentials, on pedigree, on making sure everyone knows how prestigious this institution is, that I forgot the most important thing. Which is, that good teaching has nothing to do with the name on your diploma or the price of your suit. It has everything to do with understanding your subject and caring about your students. The sentiment was nice, but Mary had heard similar words before from administrators who forgot their lessons the moment the conversation ended. I appreciate that, Doctor. Thornton, I want to offer you something more than an apology, he continued, his voice gaining strength. Mrs. Peterson won't be returning this semester. Her position is open, and after what I witnessed today, I can't think of anyone more qualified to fill it. The offer hung in the air like an unexpected gift. Mary felt the familiar tug of possibility, the same feeling she'd experienced standing at that blackboard, the sense that maybe she could step back into the light. It's not just algebra, Professor Williams added eagerly. We've been trying to start an advanced mathematics track for students who want to pursue STEM fields. With your background, you could transform our entire mathematics program, Professor Chen finished. Mary looked around the room at faces that had been dismissive an hour ago and were now filled with genuine excitement. It was tempting, more than tempting. The chance to teach again, really teach, to challenge bright minds and watch them grow. I need time to think, Mary said finally. This is all very sudden. Of course, Dr. Thornton nodded. Take all the time you need. The position will be here when you're ready. As faculty members gradually filed out, Mary found herself alone with the blackboard. She walked over to it, running her finger along the chalk marks that had changed everything. For 7 years, she'd defined herself by what she'd lost. Standing here now, she realized she'd been looking at it all wrong. Maybe it was time to stop hiding and start building something new. 6 months later, Mary stood in front of her new classroom, not as a substitute, but as the official advanced mathematics instructor at Beacon Hill Preparatory Academy. The transformation had been remarkable, both in the school and in herself. The first change was immediate and visible. Gone were the apologetic gestures and hesitant voice. Mary still dressed modestly, but there was confidence in her posture now, a clarity in her voice that commanded respect rather than begging for it. Today, we're going to explore the beauty of mathematical proof, she announced to her advanced calculus class. But before we dive into formal proofs, I want you to understand that mathematics isn't just about getting the right answer. It's about understanding why that answer is right. Her students, initially skeptical about their new teacher's unconventional background, had quickly become converts. Word had spread through the school about the substitute teacher who'd solved Dr. Thornton's impossible equation, and curiosity had given way to genuine enthusiasm for learning. "Mrs. Thompson," asked Jessica, one of her brightest students, "my older sister is at Harvard, and she says college math is completely different from high school. How can we prepare?" Mary smiled, remembering her own days interacting with Harvard faculty through David's work. "The biggest difference isn't the difficulty of the problems, Jessica. It's learning to think like a mathematician rather than just following formulas." The ripple effects of Mary's appointment extended far beyond her own classroom. Professor Williams had sought her help with mathematical aspects of literature, leading to a fascinating interdisciplinary course. Professor Chen reported that his science students were performing dramatically better since Mary had started offering after-school tutoring sessions. Dr. Thornton had become one of Mary's strongest advocates. The administrative arrogance that had defined him was gradually being replaced by something more genuine, a real interest in educational excellence rather than just institutional prestige. "The Board of Trustees is asking questions," he told Mary during one of their weekly check-ins. "Good questions. They want to know why our mathematics scores have improved so dramatically in such a short time." "It's not magic, Doctor." "Thornton, these students were always capable of this level of work. They just needed someone who believed they could do it." Their conversation was interrupted by a knock on the classroom door. Jessica poked her head in, her face bright with excitement. "Mrs. Thompson, I just got my early admission letter from MIT." She waved the envelope like a victory flag. "The admissions officer specifically mentioned my application essay about mathematical problem-solving approaches." As Jessica bounded away to share her news, Dr. Thornton turned to Mary with wonder in his expression. "6 months ago, I thought our job was to maintain reputation. Now I realize it's helping students discover what they're capable of." Mary nodded, feeling the familiar warmth that came from watching young minds flourish. Spring was arriving early in Boston that year, and with it came a sense of renewal that seemed to permeate every corner of the academy. Standing at her blackboard that evening, erasing the day's work, Mary smiled at the familiar weight of chalk in her hand. Some journeys lead us away from where we started. Others, if we're very lucky, lead us home. Mary's story reminds us that brilliance often hides behind humble facades, and that our greatest struggles can become our most powerful tools for helping others. Have you ever been underestimated because of your circumstances? Share your story in the comments below. Your experience might inspire someone who needs to hear it today. If this story touched your heart, please hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss these inspiring tales. From all of us here, remember that your value isn't determined by others' opinions, but by the positive impact you choose to make. Until next time, keep believing in second chances.